Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Don't really have much I want to say, I guess. Welcome to the new year, 2024. Let's hope it's an awesome one, full of love and minimal suffering. But of course, life is life and we're going to get a bit of both, obviously. So let's just hang in there and make the most of it and try to be grateful for all those blessings that we do have. Think positive and set some goals and work towards them and feel like you're achieving something. That's what I like to do anyway. If I just drift along, I find that life can get me down. I need to have something to aim towards, some sort of purpose, some sort of drive. So for me, that's what I need to navigate my way through this experience. So hopefully you've got some ideas and some purpose, and hopefully you can join me on this spiritual journey again for the whole year. And I look forward to bringing you a weekly episode throughout the year, and as I have done for the last couple. And it really is a pleasure to have you on board with me for this journey. So the experience today is from a lady called Krista, surname starting with G, Krista G. In the spring of 2000, I was finishing up the last few months of my physical assistant training. Becoming a physical assistant was a long-time goal of mine. I'd spent years of dedication and sacrifice working towards it. My husband and I had married in the fall of my first semester, and 1 year later we were expecting a baby. Graduating from physical assistant school and becoming a mother at the same time were far greater gifts than I could have imagined for myself. While I focused on finishing up my clinical rotations and studying for my board exams, I'd daydream about all the things to which we had to look forward to. My husband and I had moved from New York to Florida in January of 2000, and in February I went for my 20-week ultrasound. As the physician ran the probe over my belly, he showed us our baby's skull and femur, all the while taking measurements. He said, "The baby is right where it should be developmentally." As he continued to move the probe, we caught a glimpse of our baby's foot. I pointed out on one of the toes to my husband. I said, "That's your child, no doubt about it." Our baby's second toe was crooked, just like my husband's. We were laughing about this when my doctor's demeanour changed. "I want to show you something," he said. Positioning the probe to view our baby's kidney, he showed how there was a build-up of fluid inside of it. For some reason, it wasn't draining properly. He couldn't tell us for sure, but it could have been caused by anything from a benign malformation of the organ to a potentially life-shortening genetic disease. I wish I could tell you more. This was on Friday. In the practice of medicine, when forming what is called a differential diagnosis, all things that may be the cause of a person's illness must be considered until ruled out. The term "think horses, not zebras" serves as a reminder that the most common cause is the most likely cause. As we waited through the weekend for our gynecologist appointment on Monday, I researched the different diagnosis of hyponephrosis, or excessive fluid in the kidney. I tried to be positive about the root cause, telling myself it was something simple that she would grow out of. Although I tried to think horses, my thoughts kept leading me back to zebras. While my husband and I worried, my mother-in-law mentioned she'd had a problem with her kidney when she was younger and underwent a corrective surgery for it as an adult. We determined her surgery must have been for a uteropelvic junction, stricture, or narrowing of the tube draining urine from the kidney to the bladder. With this newfound knowledge, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Our baby's problem must be hereditary. It fit with what the ultrasound showed, and it was fixable. My thoughts quickly returned to horses and remained there through the rest of that long, emotional weekend. Monday morning, my husband and I met with the gynecologist, who agreed that our baby's problem was more likely due to congenital malformation of the utera, and we made the decision not to undergo surgery or any further testing. We dodged a bullet. 4 months later, in the last month of my pregnancy, my doctor brought up the option of an early delivery. I could be induced at 35 weeks, and a urologist could evaluate our baby's kidneys function sooner rather than later. It wasn't imperative that she be delivered early, but the option was there. While I tried not to be, I was afraid if I didn't go along with this plan, I might be jeopardizing my baby's long-term health, though I hesitated in giving an answer. Delivering her early would require me to be induced into labour, and I knew the possibility of a cesarean section was greater with induction. I wanted to have the experience of childbirth so badly, but couldn't hold on to that desire. 1 week could potentially make a difference, so I decided to go ahead with the induction. On the evening of July the 16th, 2000, I was admitted to the hospital's labour and delivery floor to begin the process. I was a carrier of the bacteria group B, which would put my baby at risk of developing an infection while moving through the birth canal. I required pre-treatment with antibiotics before the induction started. The penicillin had been running through the IV for only a few minutes when I noticed a strange feeling in my chest. It felt like my heart was racing and beating irregularly. I told the nurse what was happening right away, and she stopped the IV fluids. Seconds later, the feeling in my chest disappeared. Another antibiotic had to be given, and as the nurse flushed the IV to push through the medication still in it, the feeling in my chest briefly returned. The only explanation was that it must have been some sort of an allergic reaction. This surprised me, for as far as I knew, I wasn't allergic to anything, but could have developed an allergy during the course of my pregnancy. Another antibiotic was chosen and administered without the return of that strange feeling. As my husband, mother, and I settled into the hospital room for a long evening, Pitocin, the medication that would tell my uterus to begin contracting, was started. Although I have no real memory of it, I was told the night was rather uneventful. That was fine, because what followed the next morning would more than make up for it. The next morning my contractions were strong, but irregular. By 8 o'clock I had dilated only 3 centimetres. The nurse midwife broke the amniotic fluid sac to further my labour along. It had already been 13 hours, and I was progressing too slowly. Prolonged labour in a patient who was a Group B strep carrier increased the risk of infection in the baby with every passing hour, even with the administration of an antibiotic. Although I wanted to resist the thought of it with all my might, I knew a cesarean section was in my near future. The drug pitocin causes unusually strong contractions, and even though I had dilated only 3 centimetres, I was in a lot of pain. Figuring I'd need it anyway for a cesarean section, I asked for an epidural anaesthetic. This is a method of pain relief that blocks pain in a certain area. After this was placed, I lay there watching the monitor next to my bed. I knew what to look for on the screen and noticed when I was having contractions. My baby's heart rate would occasionally drop into the 60s. This was dangerously low, and I anticipated the arrival of the midwife into the room to deliver the news. Sure enough, less than a minute later, she was there, telling me what needed to be done. Although I knew a cesarean would most likely be the outcome, internally I still had a brief but strong emotional resistance to it, much like the way I'd resisted the thought of having our baby early. Between now and the surgery, constant and close monitoring of my baby's heart rate was needed, so an internal monitor would have to be placed into my baby's scalp. I'd placed them there before, yet cringed at the thought of something being screwed onto our own child's head. As the thoughts ran through my mind, I felt the same fluttering feeling in my chest that I'd had the night before. Only now it was much more severe. I'm having a hard time breathing. No sooner had the words left my lips that I went from being a little short of breath to gasping for air. A huge commotion broke out in the room, and I was yanked onto my left side, as this would make it easier for my heart to pump blood into my unborn baby. Someone slapped an oxygen mask over my face. My husband and my mother were quickly moved out of the room and into one down the hall. I couldn't seem to get enough air and had worked harder and harder to breathe. In a matter of seconds, I was being wheeled out of the room and through an open hallway. Within only a few feet from the operating room suite, the noise that had surrounded me became distant. As I faded away, the last thing I recall was the sound I made. It was one of desperately trying to breathe. My heart stopped at 9:18 in the morning. There is no such thing as a moment of death. The point at which there are no signs of life and when our consciousness leaves our body is more of a continuum. From an awareness standpoint, some time had passed between being in the hallway and the view I had from above. What happened to my consciousness during this interval, I do not know. Perhaps my energy coalesced into a singularity before exploding outward in a cloud of tiny black-grey particle matter. Maybe it leaked from the confines of my solid self, little by little, rapidly accumulating into a loose conglomerate of static-like matter that was now floating above my body. The distance between my conscious self and my body below seemed to be stretched out, as if space-time had elongated, and my now nearly immaterial self was simultaneously both near and far away from my material body. There was no sound, no pain, no fear. I could still see and glanced around the room. The ceiling had taken on a fluid transparency with some flowing solid features that still remained. I could see someone lying on a bed. Was that a person? I recall asking myself this question, as I wasn't quite sure what people were, but seemed to have a recognition of them nonetheless. The event unfolding showed me no longer involved my human form Krista in the physical sense, as she was now beyond the transparent ceiling. As I lingered above, I didn't identify in any way with the body or the people in the room. I was instead a detached observer. Although still Krista with the fine static of my consciousness, I had retained my earthly identity and felt more alive than ever. There were several people around my body now. A person in blue was on the left. At first, I noticed him bent over my body at the level of my abdomen. He then very quickly stood upright and handed a bundle to someone at my right shoulder. They took this bundle and quickly turned their back so I couldn't see, and I wanted to see. A person was near my head, placing something on my chest. Another person in blue walked into the room and stood there as if assessing what was happening, then moved to my right side, joining in on the barrage of activity around me. "What's going on down there?" I felt compelled to say. What was in the bundle? What was happening to the person on the bed? As I continued to watch, I slowly became more and more attached to what I was watching. Suddenly, an invisible force began pulling me to the left. I resisted it for a brief second, but this force was much stronger than my desire to stay. It wanted me, and knew whatever it wanted me for was important. More important than my desire to remain fixed in this place. With this understanding, I then made a conscious choice to let go. The instant this decision was made, I was moving at a terrific speed through what I could only describe as loosely confined space of static and fluid-like matter. It was infinitely large, yet immeasurably small. I felt at any moment I would either burst wide open or collapse in on me. No definition existed between my consciousness and that of its walls, which were made of this fluid, a static-like continuum of energy. As I sped along, I became intermixed with this energy, and the further on I went, the more I felt permeated with this indefinable, irrefutable, unbound love. This love and I were wholly immersed in one another. No point of separation existed. I was it, and it was I. Oh, what bliss! I felt no pain, no anxiety, and no fear. The only feelings were that of love and peaceful contentment. I wished for nothing, as there was nothing for which to wish. Within this space, I was simultaneously given the answers to all the questions I had ever had in my earthly life, with the exception of one. There would be only one question that I would not yet be given the answer. It was at this point that I veered off to my right, towards a thick, foggy, dense, whitish grey atmosphere. As I rapidly approached it, I could make out dark, ill-defined figures. They were huddled together, just on the other side of the entrance. They had a human-like form, but could only be seen as shadows of this form. I recognized one of these figures in the front to be a little boy. He was the first to come into view and had the appearance of a shadowy little Tom Sawyer with a wide brim hat and overalls. He wanted to be at the front and desired for me to take him back into the physical realm. The others who gathered around wanted him to be there as well. They sensed my desire to help and were using him in which to draw me. I felt discomfort upon entering this realm. It didn't feel as loving as a place as the one I'd just left. I could have left, but wanted to help the little boy so badly. As I moved further into this space, the others wished to take advantage of my desire to help and came at me all at once, their needs and wants pulling me in every direction. They were so sorrowful and had such yearning to leave. Initially I wanted to save them all, but knew it was far too great a task for me to take. Overwhelmed, I then wished to leave that place, and the instant that wish presented itself, I was moving away from the dark grey figures, away from the little boy, and didn't look back. I had changed my experience through my own intention, and was once again intermixed within the space of boundless divine love, but was only briefly in this space. When I again, through the power of my own intention, travelled through a sort of gate or passageway, where I emerged into what I call my Eden. I carried this love with me through the gate, my pure conscious awareness of this love, and with it, with all I witnessed around me. Upon travelling through this gate, I felt instantaneous immersion with all I witnessed around me. I was one with the vibrant yellow flowers spanning out on the ground in front of me. I was one with the sparkling waterfall cascading down huge rocks into a pure crystal pool. I was one with the distant rolling green hills and tranquil blue sky above. I was one with the deep dark evergreens edging the field of flowers to my right. What joy it was to be in this place. I felt every bit of the landscape was a unique expression of the divine that was chosen for and by me. The dense forest contrasted with the striking scene of vibrant yellow flowers and cascading waterfall. Intuitively, I knew that what lay within these trees was neither good nor bad, and that it was a part of it as well as all the other things in my beautiful Eden. I had the choice to venture into this dark place, but felt a sense of already knowing what my experience would be there. Instead, I chose to stay where I was. I didn't need or want to experience anything other than beauty, although the forest also held its own kind of beauty. Then, from the love that was both within and around me, it was communicated to me that I had one of three choices to make. First was to move forward into the woods. However, I'd already rejected that. The second choice was to continue onward to what lay beyond my present reality, and the third was to return to my body and resume the life I had left behind. However, if I chose this, I was to share my experience through being of service to others. I looked at the beauty around me, once again feeling the enormity of it, the love, the peace, the oneness of it all. My pulse returned at 9:26 a.m. I later learned that my doctor, who had just returned from his honeymoon, was the first to respond to the code blue. He had just arrived in his office that was housed in the building next door to the hospital. He was sifting through his mail when someone told him he was needed in labour and delivery. "Okay, I'll be right there," he later told the person. He later told me the person said, "No, they need you now." Dropping his mail, he ran across the breezeway between his office and the hospital. He arrived at the delivery room and was now shocked at what he saw. There was nothing in my medical history or in the course of my pregnancy to indicate I was at risk for complications of delivery. Yet, there I was, dead on the table, with my baby still inside of me. He told my husband and me that the next few minutes were a rapid succession of steps taken to deliver our baby as quickly as possible. Chest compressions were stopped and a quick incision was made to deliver my baby. I lost a significant amount of blood during this and would continue to bleed for hours afterwards. So much so, I required a transfusion. A cardiologist who happened to be in the hospital seeing the patients that morning responded to the code. He later told me that this was not his usual routine, and under normal circumstances at 9:30 a.m. on a Monday morning he was in his office seeing patients. Another surgeon was also there and came to my aid, as well as another gynecologist. There were the people who, in a seemingly random course of events, together saved my life and the life of my daughter. Following this event, I spent 3 days in the intensive care unit in a drug-induced coma. I had gone into a disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is a possible sequel of an amniotic fluid embolism, where there is uncontrolled bleeding. I was transfused and eventually the bleeding stopped. There's a very high mortality rate with AFE as well as DIC. After this, I was taken off the ventilator and put into a private room. My daughter had been taken to another hospital where there was a neonatal intensive care unit, and she was brought in to meet me. I felt like I'd already met her, but had no recollection of this. I was discharged on day 6 and was still quite out of it. I had significant memory loss. I had no fear about anything. I was a type A, an anxious-driven person before my NDE, and now I was completely someone different. Feeling this way was amazing. I felt free for the first time in my life. I recalled my near-death experience in a dream about 3 weeks after the event. It was more vivid than real 3D life. I tried to share the enormity of it with those around me, but didn't feel like they got me at all. I reached out to NDE specialist Dr. Jeffrey Long online, who emailed me back. I told him I recalled my near-death experience, but still felt like there was something I didn't recall. He told me to pay attention to my dreams. I hadn't mentioned in the email that this was how my NDE memory came to me. I spent the months following taking care of my daughter, and after 3 months had to start my new job as a physician's assistant. I was still struggling with memory, and have since, but worked very hard to learn everything again. I knew very fine details during my medical training, but not now. At the same time, I only wanted to be with my daughter. During the months and years following her birth, I struggled between believing what had happened to me and not believing it. I felt like an internal battle was going on all the time. I was changed, but everyone else expected me to be the same person I was before. I tried to meet these expectations just to get by each day. In the 13 years since my near-death experience, I've changed medical specialties 8 times, as physical assistants can do that, and couldn't ever really find work that I felt I should be doing. The most satisfaction I got was when I knew I'd helped someone else. I denied myself the beauty of my near-death experience and the knowledge I'd gained from it. In a nutshell, it was we are all here to love and express in all we do. I didn't feel like I could be that way, so I buried my experience and was discontent, unhappy, and unfulfilled as a result. I've done a lot of inner work over the last 3 years and have come to a place where I am not afraid of being myself, who is a loving person that expresses this love in the world. My life's purpose is to do this and to inspire others to live from their true nature as well. So that's the end of, what's her name's? Krista's experience. So that was a fairly detailed experience of what she went through when she went into this next dimension. The first thing that jumps into my mind as I started reading this was, oh my God, you poor females. I don't have kids myself, so I've never really been there firsthand to experience exactly what it's like. Obviously, as a male, I can't experience it myself, but to be by your partner's side when this is happening would be the next closest thing. And for me, I've never had that opportunity or experience, so it was a little bit. I just felt a little bit removed while reading this because it's not something that I have really been a part of. So, and obviously as I read it, it gives you a fairly good idea of what the process of giving birth is like. There's a few medical terms in there that are, a little bit complex and it might have lost a few of you as I was reading that, but yeah, it just made me feel for all you women who have had children and know exactly what this experience is like. And yeah, for me, I had a little bit more empathy for the pain and suffering you go through while reading it. The other thing I thought of is, quite often I read these experiences and they are linked to childbirth in some way, and it's just an incredibly dicey and risky part of the human experience for a woman to give birth, and obviously these days it's a lot safer than what it was in certain parts of the world anyway, but in less developed countries I'm sure there is still great risk, and even in safer medically advanced countries, I guess there is that element of risk still, but nowhere near what it was 100 years ago or so, where I guess women regularly died while giving birth. And because of our progress in medical technology and understanding, we're able to save women. And obviously when we do, they sometimes come back with a remarkable experience like this lady has here. So I won't go in to read all the the medical stuff again or go through it. I've pretty much summarized it there. So she's giving birth, and then she's unable to get the sufficient level of contraction. She's only dilation. She's only dilating 3 centimeters, and she's in a lot of pain. And basically, the baby's still in her, and she pretty much at that point passes out, or crosses over, or loses her consciousness. And I like the way she describes this. So she doesn't just say, I popped out of my body and I'm floating on the ceiling. She does say that, but she goes into a little bit more detail, which is great, because I often wonder what this actual moment is like. But for her, she actually she says that there's no such thing as a moment of death, because that moment where the body ceases to breathe and the heart stops beating is when the awareness in your body actually, instead of being aware of what's going on in your physical body and direct environment, then this awareness, this consciousness, this spirit, it doesn't lose its awareness. It just goes from being aware of what's happening in your body to being aware of what's happening from a different perspective. So I guess what she's saying here is that the consciousness or awareness that's in us all, the life force, the soul, whatever you call it, doesn't really have a moment of death, because that part of us is eternal and never dies. So it's just instead of calling it a moment of death, I guess she's saying it's a moment where we become aware that we're more than this body is, and we just start to get a different perspective and go into this new dimension, and we're still able to experience. It's just we don't need the physical body to experience anymore. So she says, I'll read this little bit again, or parts of it, because I found it quite interesting how she actually describes this process of leaving the body and becoming aware that she is more than that body. She doesn't actually talk about whether she had any spiritual or religious beliefs before this happened, and I would be kind of interested to know, because it doesn't say if she was surprised by this or she'd never heard of near-death experiences. It was like, she's just describing it. It's just happening. There's no surprise or relief. It's just a very matter-of-fact way of describing this process. So she's saying, this is how she describes this moment. She says, her energy coalesced into a singularity. So it got really dense, really compact. And then she says it exploded. It just shot outwards in a cloud of tiny black particle matters. And she's saying the reason this happened was maybe because she's got a couple of theories here. She says maybe because it leaked from the confines of her physical body, little by little, rapidly accumulating into loose conglomerate of static-like matter that was somehow floating above her body. Sorry, there's not two theories here. This is just a continuation of how she's describing this process of going from a physical self into this other dimension. So she's kind of describing her soul as a loose conglomerate of static-like material. That's hard to kind of imagine, but I guess the way I'm picturing it is just this ball of little sparks and energy that's kind of hovering around in one loose, compact sort of cloud-like structure. And she's able to experience actually floating from her body to out of her body. And as this is happening, the distance between her physical body and her soul, as she does this, space-time seems to become elongated. And she seems to be both close to her body, but at the same time a long way away. So she's saying there that, I guess, time becomes very hard to define in this other dimension, and so does space. So there's no close to something, there's no far away from something. It's I guess it's her way of describing that it's difficult to describe how this new dimension looks and feels from a time and space perspective. She says she can't hear anything. She says, but there's no pain. She's not really hurting at all. She has no fear, but she still has the ability to see. So every time I read this and I hear a soul leaving their body and they're still able to see, I'm like, wow, how is this possible? But, we're talking about the world of God here. So, of course, there's going to be surprises and miraculous occurrences. But just about every time I read an experience, there's a person that continues to have the ability to experience what they are going through from a visual perspective. And she, Krista, in this case, is no different. And then she says she looks up at the ceiling and it's not hard concrete anymore. It's like fluidy and transparent, and it's kind of flowing with some solid features still remaining. So that's another line that's difficult to really imagine or picture what Krista is actually seeing here, but you can use your own mind to picture what look up at the ceiling you're seeing now and imagine you can actually see through that, and there's some sort of solid bits to it, but it kind of seems to be moving around a bit, but you can still see through it, and this is how she is now experiencing the ceiling in the hospital or the doctor's office, wherever she is. It's totally changed. And then she looks down, and I sort of had a bit of a laugh to myself when I read this. She looks down and she sees a person or someone, she says, lying on a bed, and she thinks to herself, is that a person? So it's incredible that this soul that we have leaves this body and can pretty much instantaneously detach from all the knowledge or all the experiences it had as a human, to the point that it doesn't even remember what a human being is. She says she asks herself this question: what is a person? She wasn't quite sure what people were, but she has some kind of recognition of them nonetheless. And she looks again and she kind of sees that she's looking at this person, and this person is familiar, and I think she kind of draws the dots here that she is actually looking not only at a person, but the person who she used as a shell, this person she inhabited in this physical form. But she doesn't identify with this body. It's a common thing we hear, common theme from near-death experiences. They leave their bodies and they commonly don't recognize who that body was, which sounds amazing to me and probably to you. It's an incredible concept to get your head around because, obviously this is our world right now, and to think that there's a part of us that can leave it and then look back at this physical being and not connect with it in any way is amazing. It's kind of good to hear in a way, because it's nice to know that there's a part of us that's eternal, that's ageless, that is indestructible, that is totally different to what we think we are in this realm. Like, most of us walk around thinking we're this human, we're these beings that think and talk and eat and try to make sense of this crazy world, but in reality that isn't the case. There's a much more magical, divine part of ourselves that is totally, really, when it comes down to it, just totally disconnected, doesn't really identify with the body that we think we are at all. And it just says to me that our awareness, this soul, this part of us that's divine, must be so the awareness we have is so connected with our minds and our thoughts that once it's disconnected from that, it's like a big sigh of relief. It can actually step away from being aware of what's going on in the mind, and when the body's no longer functioning and it's able to leave the body and just remove itself entirely from thoughts for a while, it just kind of thinks it's been having a bit of an alien experience. And I guess in a way that is what it is like, because these human bodies we have are just shells, and the souls within them are just having the experience. And it's crazy, because most of us think we are these people, and to think that we're not is a relief. So there she is. She's floating above her body. She doesn't identify with the person she's seeing. She doesn't really understand what people are, or she sounds very, very confused. And as you would be, 1 minute you're lying there being cut open and about to give birth, and then the next you're in this other dimension looking down at these people, wondering what people are. It's a bit of a crazy trip Krista's on. But then she gets a little bit drawn into this physical experience. She starts to kind of get a little bit attached to the drama. She says, okay, there's a blue guy dressed in blue walking in, holding something in his hand, and then there's someone else, and they're looking quite panicky, and looks like they're trying to do something, and she's trying to work out exactly what's going on in the scene she's watching. And obviously with perspective, she knows it's doctors trying to save her physical life. But then this is when this experience takes another direction, because it sounds like another being enters and pulls her away and drags her off to a dimension that is totally removed from this physical realm. So there she is. She's watching her body being operated on, and then the next she's going through this, what does she say? She says she wanted to stay, but then this being kind of telepathically says to her, let's go somewhere else, and she makes a decision to follow, and then they go at a terrific speed. She says there's no tunnel, but it's like a space of static. There's that static word again, and it's got a sort of fluid-like element to it. So yeah, I guess it's a little bit jelly-like with sparks and yeah, that sort of thing flowing around, and she can feel herself moving at tremendous speed through this environment. She says she can kind of get a concept of how big it is, but it's one of those situations that it's hard for us to understand exactly what she's saying, because she doesn't really know how to put it into words herself. She says it was infinitely large, like large beyond any comprehension we'd have as a human. And then she says the very next word she writes, yet it was immeasurably small. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions as to how to interpret that. And then she describes a little bit about how she's feeling from, I guess, physical's the wrong word, but it's the only one I can think of here. She describes how she's feeling from, I guess, a physical point of view, even though she's no longer in the physical realm. She says she feels as though she's either about to burst wide open and just expand everywhere, and at the same time she feels like there's an immense amount of pressure forcing her body to compact, and feels as though the environment she's in is about to collapse onto her. So those two things there, that it's infinitely large, yet immeasurably small, and the pressure is so light that she feels like she's going to float and explode everywhere, while at the same time the pressure is so intense that she feels like this space she's in is about to collapse on her. Those two things give you an idea of why it is very difficult for people to accurately describe what being in this other dimension is like, because there's these dichotomies. There's two opposing things going on at once that are seemingly the opposite and seemingly impossible to exist at the same time, yet this is what she is experiencing. She goes on to say that in this other dimension there was that she kind of feels separate to this jelly-like, static-like environment, but at the same time she also feels part of it. So there's another dichotomy, another opposite thrown in there. She's kind of two things at once. And as she goes further along through this substance, through this fluid, she says she kind of starts to merge with it. She becomes intermixed with this energy. And the further she goes on, she feels as though this fluid type substance is really starting to permeate into her being. And as that happens, she feels this true unbound love. And the further along this goes, this love, this substance that seems to symbolize love for her, just totally molds with her, and she becomes one with it. She feels there's no separation anymore, that she is this substance, yet she still exists. Like she was it, this space, this substance, whatever this, she was this dimension, and this dimension was her. So this is that oneness, I guess, just described in another way of what it feels like when people merge with this love. And for her, it takes the form of some weird, undescribable substance. And as per usual, when this happens, everything becomes perfect. It becomes blissful. There's no pain. There's no anxiety. There's no fear. There's only feelings of love and perfect contentment. And she just doesn't need anything when she's in this space. It's like, there's the way she puts it is, there was nothing for which to wish. Interestingly, the next part I've never heard before, but so she says she is simultaneously given the answers to all the questions she's ever had in her entire life. So she gets this instant access to incredible amounts of wisdom, which comes when you merge with this loving oneness, which I guess some people call God or Source or the light. Except the bit that's a little bit different. I mean, that happens pretty much every experience I read, but in this case, she says she's given the answer to every question except for one. There's one question that she is not allowed to have the answer for. She doesn't tell us what this question was, or why she couldn't be given the answer, and it's a little bit frustrating. And then she goes into this next dimension, or the next stage of this experience, and so she started off in this hospital room, coming out of her body, moved to this other dimension where it's like this fluid, jelly, sparky, like mass of whatever fluid, and now from there she gets sees in the distance kind of human-like figures, and they look like younger people, and one of them looks like a little boy. And in this dimension, she loses that loving type experience she was having momentarily before, and she feels a little bit of discomfort entering this realm. So she sees these little kids, and they're kind of asking for help, and she doesn't quite know what to do. She kind of gives off this vibe. Look, she wants to help them, and she says these souls, or whoever they are, they seem to sense that she wants to help. And once they do that, they begin to overwhelm her with their requests to assist them. And she's new to this whole experience, so she doesn't really know what's wrong with them or how to go about helping them. So she gets a little bit panicky and stressed, and decides, look, there's probably not much I can do because I'm new to this whole dimension, and I don't know what's going on. And as she changes her intention towards what she wants to do about her own existence at that point, is when she leaves that realm that she's in and goes back to this space of boundless divine love. So I guess what happens in this little bit is a little bit like what we hear in other experiences when they go to darker realms, or they go to the void, and they start to get scared, or they just get bored and no longer want to be there. And I guess in a way it's by changing your intentions and not wanting to be in that place anymore, you can actually get out from there. Some people will ask for the light to help them. Some will ask for Jesus, and then generally speaking, this is what happens. They have an experience with some being that assists them to move on from the current realm they're in. So she doesn't actually ask for God or Jesus or a spirit guide to come and help her. She just says all she does to get out of this realm with these younger souls or children who need help and are making her uncomfortable. All she has to do to get out of there is to think, I want to get out of here and I want to go back to where I was, and that's what happens. So she goes leaves this realm, and this time the next experience, this next dimension she goes to is a similar sort of dimension we hear from other experiences. It's this spectacular earth-like scenery. There's feelings of love. There's rolling green hills. There's tranquil blue skies. There's yellow flowers. There's and she describes this place as her Eden, and doesn't want to leave because there's love from within, there's love around, there's just intense beauty everywhere she looks. It's just she feels it's like a unique expression of the divine, and it's a much better place than where she just was with these other souls that needed help, and she didn't really know what to do. So when she's in this dimension, she says she's feels suddenly, telepathically, intuitively that she needs to make a decision. And there's 3 decisions she's given. So she can move forward into these woods, which is a little bit darker. So she's in this blissful scene, but in the distance she can see these darker woods. So that's option 1 if she wants to go there. Option 2 is to continue onwards and go beyond these realms that she's just experienced. So go beyond this blissful earth-like scene, go beyond this darker realm where there's lost souls, and go beyond this fluid jelly sparky like dimension, and she can leave all this behind and go and experience a totally different type of reality. And that's option number 2. Or number 3 is return to her body and resume the physical life she has been living. And she sort of knows intuitively, though, if she chooses to come back to this physical realm, she has to be in service of others. I'll just sort of stop there and kind of have a bit of a commentary on service to others. For me, this is a big part of what my personal journey has taken. I now work in an aged care and am doing a nursing degree where I feel service to others. It has become a big part of my life, and before it wasn't like that. And although it's not the answer to all your problems, it definitely, when you're in that space, when you are helping others, when you are giving a love to other beings, your problems can just go away because you're in that space, and you just, life is good when you're able to help others and enjoy what you're doing. So this is what Krista is told. She said, even if I decide to come back to my human body, I have to be of service to others. And often this is what happens when people have a divine experience or an NDE, is they come back changed people, and a big chunk of them want to help other human beings through this challenging human experience, and Krista is no different. So she takes one last look at this incredibly beautiful dimension she's currently in, and she doesn't say what she decides, but it's pretty obvious because I'm reading this experience and you're hearing it. She decides to obviously come back to her body. She doesn't say why. She doesn't say if it was a hard decision. It's just, it's a very matter-of-fact thing. This is what happens. She, next thing she knows, she's hearing her pulse and awake in a human body again. So she then goes into a little bit of detail as to what actually happened while she was, what was happening in the physical realm while she was in another dimension. Basically they cut her open, got the baby out, put her into intensive care. She kept bleeding for a while, but managed to pull through. And then she talks a little bit about how who she is, like immediately in the following days after this close call. She's describes a little bit about what it was like, how she's changed, and I guess this is just another way of someone describing what I would call the after effects or after a glow that people will sometimes bring back from a near-death experience. It's like they're more their soul than their human form, at least for the first few days, weeks, sometimes months after they've had an experience like this. So she says that she has no fear. It's like before this experience, she was this incredibly anxious, driven person that worried about everything, and now she's had this experience and she's back in her body. It's like, yeah, she's changed. She's feeling good. There's nothing to worry about. She just feels amazing. She feels free for the first time in her life. Yeah, when I read this, I thought, this is why I used to get high a lot, because it would give me these feelings. It would be freedom from the relentless barrage of anxiety and worry that my mind likes to generate. And for those of you with anxiety, I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying here. Anytime you get that moment of freedom, however it comes, it might just be, I don't know, watching a movie or having a good meal or meditating or having a few drinks or whatever it is that gives you that break. And even those without anxiety, those, life is challenging, and when you get a break from the suffering it can encompass, then it is a welcome relief. So yeah, it's incredible when people have these experiences that they're able to totally detach from a lot of those aspects that make the human existence difficult to endure. So she says, like most people, there's a little bit of confusion, there's a little bit of doubt there as to what she's actually experienced. She goes and contacts an expert who tells her to pay close attention to her dreams, to kind of, reconnect with what actually happened. And after she does this, she does actually have a dream and kind of relives exactly what she went through. But yeah, she ends up having a daughter, and her daughter's fine, and she goes on with her career, and she can't quite find her niche as to what she wants to specialize in. It's difficult for her to nail it down, but she knows deep within herself that when she's actually helping other people is when she is most content. And if she's not doing this, she just feels totally consumed by this human experience. She doesn't feel happy. She just feels very unfulfilled. And yeah, I can relate to a lot of those things when what you're doing isn't rewarding in some way, or the right way. It becomes a chore and very distressing, and just like you're going through the motions. It's like, yeah, it's hard to find exactly for everyone. Well, not everyone is lucky enough to find something that is rewarding, and they can go through their whole lives working a job they hate. So if you're lucky enough to have found something that gives you some purpose, some drive, some passion, then good on you, stick to it. And when you do something you love, it isn't really a job or work, is it? It's something you love to do, and it's just a bonus that you get to be paid for it. And she ends with this simple sentence: my life's purpose is to continue to express love into this world and to inspire others to live from their true nature as well. So I guess what she's saying there is, at our core we are all love, and she's found that she gets the most satisfaction in this world when she's able to express this love that she truly is, that we all truly are. And that is, I guess, why loving something feels so natural and so good in this world, because when we do that, we are connecting to the source, we're connecting to our souls, we're kind of channeling something divine, and something that is not of this dimension. Like it is of this dimension, but it's the source of all that is, and that is love. So when you love something, whether that's your pet, whether that's your partner, whether that's your kids, whether that's your job, whether that's driving, whether that's nature, it doesn't matter, I guess, what it is. Anytime you are loving something, you are connecting to something much greater than what you think you are, which, you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're something more than that. And connecting with that part of you is an effective way to improve your well-being. So that's the end of Krista's experience. Thank you for joining me again for another week of this. I'll leave you by giving you and sending you and just telling you I love you. And thank you for joining me again for another episode of the first one of the year. So hopefully you get to, listen to me a few times over this coming year. And if you want to reach out for whatever reason, doesn't have to be about near-death experiences, just whatever, just send me an email. My email is podafterlife@gmail.com. Happy to hear your stories and connect with you, and just listen to what you have to say, whatever that is. So take care. I will talk to you next week. Goodbye.